Hey guys, it's me Rebecca. So this will be the start of another weekly vlog, and so far today I've just done some cleaning and whatnot. It's been relaxing as I've had a busy weekend and it's quite gloomy today, and I did start interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, and I have one gripe with this specific edition of that sense, like of it being a mass market, is that it's quite uncomfortable, I would say, to read. Like I do have to basically fold it open, and it's quite stiff, and I do need a good light source, which, as you can see from this thing, I do have. I've just turned it off because I'm not sure on how illuminated I would be, and I don't need to look like a spirit hunting you all, which I do when I'm filming in the dark. Yeah. But I'm 52 pages in, and I'm intrigued so far. We don't really get, like, the vampire's proper name until he just casually mentions his name is Louis. He's referred to as the vampire, and he's talking to this boy who's recording his life story on cassette tapes, I believe it is. And he tells the story of his life, how he became a vampire, how in, 1790 something, he is running this plantation, taking care of his mother, his brother and sister. His brother, who's a very religious person, someone who dreams of going into like a convent? That's not why, but had this vision where he's told by this figure that his brother has to sell the plantation in order to be free from this, and his brother doesn't believe it and thinks that the religious stuff is just too much, and his brother eventually dies, and he is blamed because they were arguing again. I don't think, despite the century, siblings argue all the damn time. I don't really know if there's anything a sibling could actually say in a heat of the moment that would just cause someone to kill themselves. But yeah, and the vampire is quickly turned into a vampire by this person named Lestat, who wants to own the vampire's plantation and make it his home. And it seems like Lestat hasn't been a vampire very long, as he is taking care of for his dying father, who is blind and will be dying in a second. So we see that, and we see the vampire of Louis. I should say I have seen the TV show, so I'm trying to keep what I know from the show separate from the book, because they're two different elements. Not elements, but they're two different ways the story was told, and so I'm just so used to seeing the story from when in the book it's the vampire that is, like, his name is never used. It's just the vampire. So yeah, and as I've just mentioned, it is quite different from the show real quick, because there's no acquaintance between them when Louis turned at all. It's like they essentially met, or they not met, but he was attacked. Where's my train of thought? Sorry, ow, opposite. But here we see the vampire, like, does not really like Lestat. It seems like Lestat is like, oh, I'll teach you everything you need to know, and Lestat's just a god-awful teacher from what I see. And I do like how a lot of the things we associate with vampires, like, they can look at themselves in the mirror, and they can be near a cross or whatever. It's like laughable. And there are certain things that affects them negatively, that can harm them. But yeah. And we see this that and we have different ideas, different philosophies. Like Lestat isn't afraid to kill recklessly. He'll kill anyone to, I guess, satisfy his hunger. And in fact, he is greedy essentially. And he's also someone who wants revenge on mankind. It seems like, as Lestat is called. Sees that this plantation won by this boy. He only has 4 or 5 sisters, so there's no male heirs to take it. And he decides, like, when this boy gets into confrontation in town and is forced to duel this person, that he'll kill this boy regardless if he wins or loses. And we see how he kills him, and how Louis wanted to stop this stuff from doing that and failed, and how Louis tried to help the sisters like live and be sufficient, I would say, after they lose the only man they have in their lives. Because again, this is 1790, so a woman doing something on her own without any men to do it, that causes a scandalous for you to learn it. When one of the sisters continue wanting the plantation, and where I'm at now is that the slaves at Louis' plantation, they're like afraid of him and Lestat. They kind of are figuring out who Louis and Lestat might be after seeing some stuff and snooping around, and they're plotting to kill them or destroy them. And now it's a battle, not a battle, but it's like a question of what will happen next. Like, cause Louis telling us that he needs to leave, like his father's about to die, like there's nothing here at the DuPont plantation anymore. And Lestat's like, yeah, you would love for me to get out of your house, really. And it's like, I can watch this house burn, I don't give a fuck. So, yeah, I'm scared to see what happens next with all of these innocent people, all of these slaves, because we have Louis, who just wants to protect himself, protect his sister, because his mom's already died. And then we have Lestat, who doesn't care who he kills, like he is reckless, and again he does want revenge on humanity for reasons, and he is arrogant, he is not possessive, but he has this vengeance he's on, and he's consumed with envy and consumed with hatred about something. So yeah, I'm curious on where this goes, and yeah, and I think that's all for now. So see you. So it's the next day, and I've done some work and whatnot, and I have been doing some more reading of Interview with the Vampire, and I'm on page 154, and I just realized I never gave you a synopsis of the book. I just went straight into it. I don't know, I apologize, but yeah. And if you don't know what this is about, this is The Confessions of a Vampire in this novel, apparently. Hypnotic, shocking, and chillingly erotic. This is a novel of mesmerizing beauty and astonishing force. A story of danger and fright, of love and loss, of suspense and resolution, and of the extraordinary power of the senses. And what sense is that Louis and Lestat, because they were discovered by the slaves, or the slaves kind of figured out what they are, or yeah, and they kill, I guess, the head of the slaves, or yeah, the guardian, the person who has to watch the slaves, or I'm not entirely sure what the position was, but yeah, they have to burn down the plantation and then end up killing all of the slaves, and they go to, what's her name, Rabinet? Like, the sister of the boy that Lestat killed, and beg her to give them a place to hide and whatnot. And she does that, and they lock themselves in from the inside, but she also locked them in. And when she goes to open the door, it's very clear that she has realized who they are and what has happened next door, because she is the owner of the farm that's next to the plantation. And sorry, a lot of stuff has happened. And she now thinks Louis is the devil. He sent her to kind of not torment her, but to tempt her into not doing what she's supposed to do as a good Christian. And he means like, am I actually so bad? Like, I try to be good, but am I, because of why I'm this bad? Like, it's a whole thing with God and religion and beliefs, and I just found that quite interesting, considering Louis is, I think he does mention he was a Catholic. He was someone who was very religious himself. So. And Louis and his dad, we see they go to New Orleans and they start falling out because, I mean, the plantation's no longer there. The dad's father's no longer alive. There's not really a reason for the two to be together anymore. And they start falling out, and the way that's this carelessly killing people and whatnot. And Louis, he's on a walk, and he sees this young girl, this 5-year-old child, crying on the side of a bed because her mother has died, and because she is 5 years old and doesn't realize that her mother has died. And something about her tempts Louis, something about her childlike beauty, and he drinks her blood and almost kills her until that stops him. And this that, as I would say, a manipulative way to make Louis stay, turns her into a vampire later on, being like, oh, she's my daughter, but she's also your daughter. She's our daughter. You cannot abandon her. You cannot abandon us now. Like, it's just a bit manipulative and forcing Louis to stay. And we see that there's a few years where there's peace between the three of them, or they're like their own little family, until Claudia starts asking questions about who Lestat is, how he knows what he knows, who turned him to a vampire, and he refuses to tell them, and they become cold with one another, and Claudia is resentful towards Lestat for turning her into a vampire, but also now she learns that Louis drank from her and almost killed her, and she also resents him for putting her in a position. And I get it, because she's like, what? She mentally, I guess, is, or in vampire age, I guess, is older. Like, it seems like it's been over 60 years have passed since they're together or something like that, but yet physically she's still a 5-year-old child, so yeah, we just see how there's a lot of resentment in there, and how she plans to free herself from Lestat. How she plans to go to Central Europe, because of the books she read, it seems like that's where vampires would be, and she wants to find more of their kind. And in order to be free from Lestat, she plans to kill him, and we see how she does that by taking 2 boys and poisoning them, and thereby poisoning Lestat when he drinks from one of them, and then she slits his throat and whatnot. So we see that, and we see Louis just grapple with guilt about this, and grapple about guilt about, well, everything, his brother, what happened to Babinette. I swear I forgot her name. Because Babinette, it doesn't seem like she handled what happened, what she learned afterwards well. She fell apart, seeing that her plantation is now haunted. and whatnot, so things are no longer going well for her. And where it seems like Louis and Claudia are leaving New Orleans. But now it seems like they might have to worry about this young musician that Lestat took under his wing, who was a friend of Lestat Howe. And Lestat said he would just turn this person into a vampire, and it's never known if he actually did. Because the boy shows up when Lestat has died, or the boy's eyes has just left, and he's thinking like, maybe has he left anything for me? Like, he sounds like he's extremely desperate, and maybe this boy is, because what's the word? Lestat was his only patron, because it seems like the boy he was talented, but he wouldn't have been able to make a career of being a musician because of the kind of songs he was writing. So yeah, I am curious to see if anything comes from that, because as Louis notices there are bite marks on the boy's neck, so maybe Lestat killed him, or turned him into a vampire, or started a process. But I don't think it's ever mentioned that Louis or Claudia have bite marks on their neck. I mean, Louis doesn't really seem like to look in the mirror, and I'm guessing because of Claudia's hair covering her neck, he's just never really able to see it, so yeah. So far, I'm just liking the story and how it goes through. Because I'm only on page 154 and a lot has happened, I think it's just, like, time doesn't really feel like it's passing. Like, it just feels like one thing's happening after another sort of thing. So yeah, I just don't really feel the time passing by, but I mean, it is difficult, I guess, there's a book to do anything to make it, but, or, I don't know, because the changes in New Orleans wouldn't have been quickly, it would have been more, like, subtle, like, it wouldn't have been rapid, but taking its time, so, yeah, I just don't know how else I would have been able to tell if time passes by, like, so much without, because, yeah, besides the mention of Claudia mentioned, like, it's been over 60 years, like, it just seems like it just was quite sudden. I would say that she just got resentful, but I guess that is the point. But yeah, I think that's all for now. So it's the next day, and I've just done quite a bit of work, and I have done some reading of Interview with the Vampire, and I do plan to be doing some more reading, but I just wanted to update before it got too dark, so yeah. And currently I'm on page 214, and I'm definitely intrigued in a sense. We do see Lestat has somehow come back from the dead, and he did turn his musician companion into a vampire, and to go after Louis and Claudia as they are planning to leave New Orleans and attack them, and the house gets set on fire, the house they're living in. That's the end of part 1. Part 2 is Louis and Claudia have gone to Eastern Europe and are looking for vampires. It seems like currently they were in Transylvania, and they come across these villagers who are extremely superstitious, on digging up the grave of a woman who was recently buried, and she looks like she's still alive, and the villagers like put a stake in her heart, put a shovel down her throat, cut off her head. Like, they think she is a vampire, and we see how Louis and Claudia, they stumble upon this house where there's a what was it, like a cross, or it's a very specific sign. I'm like blanking on the term for. But there's that, and there's garlic, so that those villagers are also scared. And when they go into the house, there's this English couple who are honeymooning. It seems like Morgan and Emily. And Emily, she's in a bad state. It seems like the villagers want to destroy her, cut off her head, thinking she might be a vampire. And Lou and Claudia leave the house to go searching for the vampire, and they do. Somehow, within this time, Morgan also leaves and is captured by the vampire and is gravely injured. And the vampire is unlike Louis and Claudia in a sense. It's not human, it's something other than human. I don't really know if we'll see more of it. I don't think so, because they did leave Eastern Europe, and Claudia wanted to go to France, and we see Louis, who I think he was mentioned he was born in France, but that was like in 1790, and this is sometime in 1850s, 1860s probably. So it's been a very long time, and it seems like he remembered living there, but the city has definitely changed since he last lived there, and we see how both him and Claudia are affected by this move, how Louis is in love with Paris, in love with the city and all of the things it has to offer, all of its quirks and all of the different streets of it. While Claudia, she's kind of given up the, I guess, not personality, but the disguise, I would say, of like, oh, I lost the girl, I orphan, what she used to lure in her victims, and she is obsessed with the witches of the city, of the nice jewelry and whatnot, and she is acting like a little girl playing dressed up, and she, it seems like, is still extremely resentful towards Louis for turning her into a vampire when she was still so young, because mentally she is much older, but physically she still is a 5-year-old child, and she hates that people will see her as a cute little young child, like a doll, and she does meet this doll maker and has her make a human doll of her, an adult doll, I guess, and there's an also weird scene between Louis and Claudia where Claudia just seems like she's just fed up with the fact that Louis still is treating her like she's his daughter, and it seems like she wants more, like she's asking him about making love, and I don't know, I just found that a bit weird. And where I stopped is Louis left, and he is walking the city, someone's following him, and this person, when he turns around and meets them, is copying his behavior, like copying like how he's moving, and it's quite intriguing. And this person, it seems, is also a vampire, so I'm curious about where that would be going next. But yeah, I am scared, I guess, to see if that tracks them down and what will be made of his companion, his new companion, I would say. So yeah, overall I'm intrigued, and it is easier to read physically, as I have had to open this book through it. Is still quite stiff, so, but that's just my particular copy of it. And yeah, so far I'm liking it, I would say. And yeah, and I think that's all for now. So it's the next day, and I've done quite a bit of work and whatnot, and I did do quite a bit of reading last night and today, and I did finish Interview with the Vampire and just now, and I very much enjoyed this overall. The writing was this, at points I was gripped, I would say, and what I want to say I'll get to a bit later, but Louis does meet two vampires, one who attacks him for no reason, like this dude who's a trickster named Sandago and Armand invites him and Claudia to the theater the next night, and then the theater is literally called the Theater des Vampires or something of that sort. And Louis goes, and he and Claudia watched this play, and it's very, like, it has this effect on Louis. It chants him in a sense. It's a same vampire who attacked him the night before, playing like the role of death, and a woman comes in, and a bunch of vampires like surround her, and she's slowly being seduced, and she's trying to fight, like, have a will to live and whatnot. The plays like we all die in the end essentially, so why not just die now? And Louis is just enchanted when he watches this play and watches like how the vampires are undressing the woman in public, and they drink her blood and kill her, and as I said 1,000 times, it does have an effect on him that, like, and after the show, he and Claudia meet the rest of the vampires and whatnot, and they get into a conversation with Armand in his cell, he calls it, and he and Louis and Armand have this conversation on that's really been throughout the book, and that's one thing I liked about the book is that Louis, he grew up Catholic, and in his mind, he's evil because vampires are evil. He thinks that they're children of the devil, and Armand thinks, well, technically, the devil came from God, so we're all children of God. So, and that's really why Louis won't drink the blood of humans, because he thinks it's so evil. And Armand also has Claudia under this spell that enchants her, and she doesn't like Armand, and Louis is enraptured. I think that's the word. By him, like, we see that he's falling in love with Armand and whatnot. And Claudia and Louis, they spend more time in Paris, and when he comes back to the hotel room they're staying at, you see that Claudia has brought home a woman, a doll maker named Madeline, and she wants Louis to turn Madeline into a vampire because she doesn't have the strength to do it herself, the physical strength, and she wants to do that because she still has a lot of resentment towards Louis, and is that for turning her into a vampire when she was such a young girl, and she just wants a companion who won't really care about that, who she can have new life with, and Louis does that. And the thing is, whenever we see Louis drink the blood of a human, sometimes the way it's written, it's like, it's such an intimate thing. It's like, the way it's written, it's almost like he's making love to her, and I just found that quite interesting. Yeah, we see how the other vampires, for some reason, they don't trust Louis and Claudia, because they're both quite secretive about who their maker is, what happened to him, and apparently it's against vampire law to kill your maker, and they're also wary of Madeline as she spends a lot of time with them, and they don't know, it seems, that Madeline is a vampire. And we get a point where Louis, Madeline, and Claudia, they're attacked in their hotel room and taken to the theater, and Lestat is there, and it seems like Lestat made a deal with Santiago to bring Claudia and Louis, and Santiago betrayed him or tricked him, because they brought Louis and Claudia, but are planning to kill the both of them. They're not planning to give Louis to Lestat. No. So you see how Louis just, like, fallen into a coffin, bricked into a wall, because one way a vampire can die is from starvation, so. But with Claudia and Madeline, their death is more, I don't know, violent? More visible, more quickly. As they're just thrown into this yard and exposed to sunlight and they become ashes, and it's like they didn't fully dissolve, like there's still aspects of them that remain. And we see Louis who wants revenge, and he warns Armand that to stay away from the theater as he's gonna destroy it. And there's something else oh, there we are, sorry, I was like, there's something else in between I wanted to mention. In a sense, before the revenge, Armand and Louis are talking, and Armand mentions that slowly all vampires do die as they fall in love with the style and the life that of the time that they were transformed, that they cannot really adapt to the more modern ways of life, and it slowly drives them crazy. And I think that's quite interesting, that concept, and I would have liked to have explored more of it. And yeah, we see the revenge, we see how Louis and Armand travel for some time, until, like, they go to Greece, they go to Italy, they go to what Louis says is the Asia Minor, which I'm not entirely sure what that would be. And eventually they do end up in New Orleans, and Louis both is struck by how different the city is, but also how it's the same compared to when he left it, I think, over a century ago. How things are still the same, and it seems as well that Louis has still lost his passion, his love for things. I mean, he does love art and whatnot, but his passion and love for life, really, he still has a lot of anger in him. And he does find Lestat, and it seems like he almost forgives Lestat. Like, Lestat seems to have a lot of regrets, and Lestat, we see, is slowly dying. Like, he is stuck in the past, and he can adapt to the current life, but I don't know if that's partially because he was turned into a vampire sometime around the time Louis was, or if it's because he has regrets for what happened in Paris that's holding him back. So I am curious if that would be explored, and I think it's the Vampire Lestat that's the next book in this series. And they both do get some closure in one, and Armand does tell Louis that he is responsible. I don't know why I said partially. He is responsible for the fact Claudia died, as he's the one who threw her into the yard and locked the door. So yeah, we see the end of that, and how Louis, he's just done, and he's tired, and he no longer wants to go back to what's familiar with him. He just wants to be in a place where no one knows him, and he knows no one, and that's the end of his story. But with the end of the book is that the boy who's writing his story is unsatisfied with the ending, how Louis can just give it all up, and the boy asks Louis to turn him, because the boy, I guess he's arrogant enough to think, oh, I'll make a better vampire than you, and he does get attacked by Louis and survives. And he does find, like, I guess not the exact address of Lestat, but the area Lestat would be in, and goes to him. So yeah, that's the end of this book. And overall, I did like a lot of the discussions about how being a vampire and killing people to survive, if that naturally makes you good or evil. If, I don't know, like, there's somewhere I want crazy, but it's like really the whole discussion of like good versus evil, if you are good or not, if you're now Satan's child instead of God's child, like the whole discussion about that when it comes to vampirism, I just found interesting. So, and I am glad it is touched that Claudia does have a lot of resentment towards Louis and Lestat for turning her when she did, because as she is growing mentally, she probably still has a lot of resentment in the sense like she has the body of a 5-year-old child. Like no one is gonna take her seriously, and she found someone else who would care for her. And the idea that as well that Claudia and Louis, like them being in each other's lives, was only like a phrase, and if they continued, they would just hold each other back. So yeah, I guess like with her death, it's a new phrase, a darker phrase, I guess, for Louis. So yeah, overall 4 stars. And I think I'm gonna mention or talk about what book I'm planning to read next tomorrow. So yeah, that's all for now. I'll see you. So it's the next day, and I've done some work and whatnot, and I have done some reading, and the book I started is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. And this is about high school sophomores. Abby and Gretchen have been best friends since 4th grade. But after an evening of skinny dipping goes disastrously wrong, Gretchen begins to act different. She's moody, she's irritable, and bizarre. Incidents keep happening whenever she's nearby. Abby's investigation leads her to some startling discoveries, and by the time their story reaches its terrifying conclusion, the state of Abby and Gretchen will be determined by a single question. Is their friendship powerful enough to beat the devil? And yeah, and I'm on page 118 of this, and so far I'm just feeling meh about it. Like, I just don't feel connected to the story. I don't really feel like I'm in the story. There was a bit of a disconnect for me personally. Like, I don't think it's bad, but so far, but I just feel like I'm at a distance of it. I don't know, like there's something about this. But the writing, I guess that's just, I'm not in the story, I guess, like I just, yeah, but yeah. But with this we see the beginnings of Abby and Gretchen's friendship, how Gretchen was the only one who went to Abby's birthday party, which was held at this wing, the skating rink, and on the same day that another girl in their class, Margaret, was holding her birthday party, and there would be horses, so everyone went for the horses. And we see Abby and Gretchen grow and deal with, like, I guess teenage problems, really, how they're going through puberty and whatnot, and how things are changing. And one thing I do find, I guess, interesting, or one thing I do like, I should say, is that Abby, she's a bit of, I don't want to say an outcast, but an outlier, I would say, because she and Gretchen attend this, like, good school. It's like, I want to say Alberti Academy or something, but it's quite prestigious. It seems like it's really aimed at those who want their sons and daughters to be respectable citizens, respectable members of society. And everyone there comes from well-off families, everyone's rich and whatnot. And Abby, she comes from middle class or lower middle class, and she's really only there on a scholarship. So compared to Gretchen and her other friends, like, she's not so well off. Like, we see Gretchen, like, have this nice house in this nice area. It's like that kind of area, the way it's described, like, you would think of, like, the stereotypical Southern American house with the like, wraparound porch and whatnot. While Abby lives, I wouldn't say in the dumps, but the areas that don't look so nice, I would say. And we see the difference with Gretchen and Abby in that sense. Like, Abby's parents, especially her father, don't really seem to care, because her father lost his job when he went on the protest, and he's been in between jobs a lot and whatnot. And her mom is a house nurse, so Abby kind of has had to, I guess, fend for herself. Not fend for herself, that's not correct at all, but she's kind of had to do stuff herself, like do her laundry and whatnot. And she decides to get a job to get money so she can buy herself stuff, so she can also kind of put on an air of appearance like she's able to take care of herself, and she's like separated from her parents and what she can do for herself, I guess. While Gretchen's parents are good, they try to put on the air that they're good people, that they're churchgoers and whatnot. And when things start going weird for Gretchen, they pray for her, thinking they're helping her, but not really. And they care, it seems like, more about their reputation than about Gretchen, because they actually take her to a doctor to see if she's had sex, and that doctor now has a file on her, and she's worried that her parents will send her to this institution to kind of make her disappear. So yeah, it's kind of Gretchen's life on the line, I would say. Well, not to that extent, but her like life outside her family, her life in the future, more like. Yep. And what happens is that night that things change is that Abby and Gretchen, they're hanging out with a couple of their other friends during the summer, when someone gets the bright idea to do acid. Yeah, Gretchen is scared, and because of what happened to a previous member of Pink Floyd, Sid Barrett, I want to say his name was. But they do it. They don't really feel any effect. And Gretchen decides they should go skinny dipping in this like pool or river or some body of water near their friend Margaret's house. And Gretchen, she just jump in, and the water is quite not deep, it's quite shallow, and they go searching for Gretchen in the woods. And Abby in the dark stumbles upon this shack, and she hears a man's voice, and it's all quite creepy. And it's early morning when they find Gretchen, and she's cold. She's just like a bit shaken from this, bit as you would expect. And things do change in a sense. Like Gretchen, she's trying to fall asleep when she feels someone touching her neck, and then some invisible hands touching her body when she's just trying to sleep, and it's freaking her out. She's acting more, I would say, cool towards her friends, and especially towards Margaret, who she did not say some nice things about Margaret's boyfriend, who none of them really like, but yeah. And she's just unintentionally getting in trouble at school because she cannot help with his urges, and with the lack of sleep, it is obviously affecting her negatively. And so we see her like throw up these feathers and other stuff, and the feathers, in Abby's opinion, looks like they come alive. And yeah, we see Gretchen changing for the worse. And yeah, and yeah, it's just, I don't know really, I still don't, cause some of it is here, and I am intrigued of what is happening with Gretchen, but I just don't really feel connected to the writing. So I think it's more of a me thing, so yeah. But I think that's all for now. So I'll see you. So it's the next day, and as you saw, I did go out today. A town close to me was doing a library show, and yeah, I went. And I did get 3 books. I got The Cimarron by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I just have, this is, okay, I'm not doing this a good job with one-handed, and but this is the cover. Now this jacket is just old. I'm tempted just to take it off because that's beautiful. And yeah, I also got Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna Van Veen. I just need to look at something real quick because I forgot to look at that, if I can see it, because oh no. Yeah. And the last book I got was The Book of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk, and this was translated by Jennifer Croft. I would, what was it? Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, I think it is, a few months ago, and I liked it and I wanted to read more by her, so yeah. And I did do some reading today, and I am of My Best Friend's Exorcism, and I'm on page 238, and while I'm still finding this book fine and I'm not really connected to the characters, I am a bit more intrigued in the last 100 pages I read today, because I usually do some reading like maybe half an hour when I wake up in the morning. When I went to this morning, I was just like, didn't really care for, because what I read was like Gretchen, she's deteriorating, she's falling apart, she's getting worse, and we see like Gretchen not really caring about her appearance, like wearing the same clothes every day, not really bathing, and like her face is like acne prone, and we see Abby, she tries to talk to Gretchen's parents, and they blame Abby for what happened to Gretchen because Abby made the mistake of mentioning that they did acid. Yeah, and Gretchen's parents now see her as a bad influence to Gretchen. I almost fell because how I was sitting, but yeah. And Abby also goes to some of the teachers at the school, and it seems like no one cares, and it's up to Abby to help Gretchen. And Gretchen, she's, I guess, making things worse, or Abby's making things worse, because Margaret's boyfriend Wallace is acting weird, and Gretchen mentioned that something happened to her in the woods, and Abby believed it could be rape. And she talks to Glee, one of their other friends, that maybe Wallace did something to Gretchen, and unknowns to Abby, Glee had Margaret and Abby and her on a 3-way call, and Margaret doesn't believe what Abby is accusing Wallace of. It's, I mean, Abby's, oh my word, accusation, my god. I don't know, it's a bit far-fetched, because Gretchen was saying something that happened to her in the woods, but she's also saying something is continuing to happen to her. Someone's putting their hands on her at night and whatnot. And Abby is only taking the part where Wallace might have done something to Gretchen in the woods, and she's only thinking it's Wallace because he had his band's name written on a shack, and some of the drinks there were the drinks they were warned to stay away from because they contain a date rape drug. So here we see Gretchen, and
First, Gretchen kind of has not falling out, but Margaret and Glee abandon her because of the fact she's acting weird, and then because of what Abby says. And then suddenly, then Abby has had enough of Gretchen's behavior and stops being friends with her, and then suddenly Gretchen changes. She's better, but she's acting more cold towards Abby, and Abby's now an outcast with everyone. And we see how Gretchen is suddenly getting all of this attention and whatnot. And the exorcist comes in when these brothers come to the school to just, I guess, show off, lift weights, and put on a show for everyone. And one of the brothers says that they can see a demonic presence in the audience, and looks at Gretchen and notices there's something demonic about her. And Abby, not knowing what else to do, goes to him, and he does think Gretchen is possessed, and we just see them making plans. And all the while things are getting worse and weirder, because Abby calls a number she thinks could be Andy, the boy that Gretchen was talking to, only Gretchen picks up acting weird, acting scared, like someone has replaced her and she's buried somewhere, and she's worried this person will make things worse for Abby and will try to eliminate Abby because she's the only friend Gretchen has. And this person, and on Halloween things will get worse, is what Gretchen says. And things do get worse for Abby and for others, because Glee has started spending more time like in communion and in the church area of the school. I don't really know what it was called, but in more time with the priest there, with the father there. And suddenly she's this quiet girl who wants to do her schoolwork too. Just about to blow herself off the roof, and that's quite sudden. And Gretchen is encouraging Margaret to go on an extreme diets and take these shakes that's supposed to make her lose a bunch of weight. And yeah, I don't even want to know what Margaret would like, but she's pushing Margaret away. Not pushing Margaret away, but causing others to push Margaret away, and also tries to accuse Abby of handing out drugs and alcohol on school premises, even though she's not even on the premise at the time, resulting in Abby nearly getting kicked out of the school. And we see her parents, who are quite passive actually, say something, and yet like say about how much they dislike the, I guess, principal of the school to the principal's face. And it was an interesting scene, and yeah. And yet her parents still think she did something wrong, because like they put all of this hard work, and it seems like she's throwing it away, and they don't want that for her. So she also now has that to deal with. And yeah, just where I stopped is her trying to. Sorry for that interruption, but I had chosen a horrible time to film that update, as one of my parents was having some tests done, and I had to go and pick them up. So far it seems everything's okay with them, so that's good. But yeah, and I think they're saying that Gretchen, something about Gretchen. I've not looked at it anymore. Maybe I'll be trying to help Gretchen and whatnot, but I am just curious on if that help will be successful and really where it goes. But yeah, and I don't know, like Gretchen's, I guess, changes at first could also be like, without the horror aspect of her being possessed, and well, or really not manipulated, but being like tortured, I guess, by the devil, and controlled by the devil. And without that horror element, it could also be written as like, she is a teenager going through puberty mood swings, like, but these mood swings would be so to the extreme, I guess, but yeah, so far I am definitely intrigued more about the second half than I was the first half. About what's gonna happen and what more weird stuff I guess will happen. But yeah. And I think that's all for now. So it's the next day, and I've had quite a long day as I just had to do a bunch of errands today. I did my grocery shopping and whatnot, and I did get my eyes examined just to be sure that they're good, and yeah, I guess the health of my eyes or my vision, I don't know, but everything looks normal, and yeah. And I also had to get an oil change, which is as fun as it sounds. Thankfully, I have two things. My Walmart, my closest Walmart does have an auto center, so I was able just to walk around a bit over there while my oil change was happening. I didn't buy anything. But it also gave me time to read, and today I did finish my best friend's exorcism, and I have been thinking about it, and I think overall, because I just didn't really feel connected to the story, and I struggled a bit through the first half, I think I'm going to give it 3 stars overall. Like, it was interesting to say the least. There we see Abby try once again to get help to deal with Gretchen by giving the father at her school Gretchen's notebook, which has some disturbing stuff written in it. Except the demon possessing Gretchen comes to Abby, takes the notebook, and leaves behind a dead fetus and a dead baby, which had been reported missing from a local university's lab. And apparently during their sophomore year, they have to go on this field trip to study anatomy on real bodies, and they're like, a baby was stolen, and that's not good for Abby. She's in a lot of trouble because of that, and she does go to the exorcist she was communicating with to deal with Gretchen. And trigger warning, I think everyone who's read this book has mentioned this trigger warning, but there was a dog's death, and yeah, and we see the exorcist try to get this demon out of Gretchen, and how the demon is fighting back, and it's quite powerful, and the exorcist, he realizes, is way over his head, and he does need more help in dealing with this, so he leaves to get his dad. And while he's gone, Abby decides to take matters into her own hands and try to get the demon out of Gretchen by saying like everything that Gretchen loves, everyone who cares about her, everything related to the time period and their friendship, and somehow is able to get the demon out of Gretchen. And we just see the aftermath, how because of what Abby apparently did, she's in a lot of trouble with the law, of course. And the lawyers that Gretchen's parents hired try to make Abby look like the worst person ever. The exorcist comes to her rescue and takes the blame for what happened. He only serves a few months in prison before disappearing, and Abby and her parents move out of Charleston, and you can see how Abby and Gretchen, they try to communicate with one another, but their parents try to prevent it until Gretchen borrows her mother's car to drive to Abby's, and yeah, we see how they continue to be friends for the rest of their lives. They're not as close as they once were because of the fact they live in 2 different places, and life is a thing, like when they were in school as it is, and then applying to college, and then going to different colleges, and then there's life, getting your first real job, getting rent, paying bills, falling in love, having children, getting divorced, etc., etc. How
slowly they're drifting apart, and yet Nan, Gretchen was there for Abby as she was dying, and yeah, so yeah, I did like the second half more than the first half, of course, but it's still a 3-star for me personally, so yeah. And with that, that is also the end of this video. So if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below, tell me what you've been up to recently. If you want to, please subscribe to the channel, and if you want to follow me on any social media, all those links are on the down bar below. I will see you guys next time I post.